Emily woke up that morning to the soft glow of sunlight spilling into her small wooden house. The chirping of birds filled the air, and a gentle breeze moved the curtains, carrying the scent of fresh flowers from her tiny garden. She loved these quiet mornings, the kind that felt peaceful and full of life. But even in these calm moments, there was a tension in her home she could never ignore. Her husband, Robert, was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the floor, his face tight with some unspoken anger. Emily tried to smile, tried to start a normal conversation, but Robert barely looked up. "I'll be busy today," he said abruptly, pushing his chair back. There was no warmth in his voice, no concern in his eyes. Emily felt a familiar knot in her stomach. She had long grown used to his coldness, his short temper, and his sudden bursts of impatience. She had once believed in love, in kindness, and in the happiness they promised when they first met. But over the years, that warmth had faded, leaving behind fear and uncertainty. Trying to push away her worries, Emily decided to step outside. Her garden was small but beautiful. She had planted marigolds, daisies, and lavender, which were beginning to bloom. She enjoyed caring for them. It gave her a sense of peace she rarely found in her home. She worked quietly, tending to each plant, watering the soil, and humming softly under her breath. The world outside seemed perfect, the sunlight sparkling on the leaves, the distant hills rolling gently, and the soft sound of a stream nearby. After a while, she decided to take a short walk into the nearby woods. It was a familiar path she had walked countless times before. She loved how the trees created a canopy over the trail, making her feel safe and hidden from the world. Birds fluttered between branches, and the smell of damp earth mixed with wildflowers filled her senses. Emily felt at ease, even though the back of her mind carried the unease that Robert's mood always brought. She wandered deeper into the woods, admiring the small details, the way the sunlight danced on the water of the stream, the tiny insects crawling on the moss, and the gentle rustle of leaves as a breeze passed through. She felt connected to the world here, away from the coldness of her home. But as she stepped over a fallen branch, a sharp pain struck her ankle. Before she could react, she felt a burning sensation on her leg. She looked down in horror and saw the snake, its fangs still sinking into her skin. Emily's heart raced. She had never encountered a venomous snake so close before, and panic surged through her. She tried to move away, but the pain made her stagger. Her breathing became shallow, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. She felt her legs weaken and her vision blur. She knew she needed help immediately, but the realization hit her like a cruel wave. Robert would not be coming. She had seen that coldness before. That moment when fear for himself overcame any thought of kindness. He had always been selfish, always thinking of his own safety and comfort, and now, in this most desperate moment, she understood fully the depth of his cruelty. She felt abandoned, left alone to face the danger and pain by herself. Her heart ached, not only from the bite but from the betrayal she had known all along but had hoped would never truly come. Emily tried to crawl toward a safer spot, but the venom was spreading fast. Her muscles ached, and each movement became more difficult. She shouted for help, hoping anyone might hear her cries. The woods, usually filled with life, seemed silent and indifferent. The birds had flown, the wind had died down, and even the stream sounded distant and muted. Emily felt the weight of loneliness pressing down on her chest. She realized that her survival depended entirely on her own strength now. Memories of better times came rushing back. She remembered the early days of her marriage, the laughter they had shared, and the small joys that had once made her heart light. She remembered the promises Robert had made, promises of love, protection, and partnership. And now, in this moment of danger, the emptiness of those promises struck her painfully. She understood that sometimes, people hide cruelty behind charm and comfort, and she had been a victim of that hidden side. As the minutes passed, Emily's energy waned. She could feel herself drifting in and out of consciousness. She wanted to scream, to call out louder, but her voice was weak, Fear wrapped around her heart like a heavy blanket. She thought of the future she might never see, the friends she had made in the town, the dreams she had quietly nurtured, and the simple joys of life she had always cherished. A tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered a silent plea, hoping that somehow, someone would come to her rescue. Hours seemed to pass in a blur. Emily's body felt heavy, her thoughts sluggish. She had to keep moving, to keep hope alive, even if every instinct told her to give in to despair. She dug her hands into the soil, pushing herself forward inch by inch, her mind clinging to the faint possibility of survival. The pain was sharp, relentless, and every step required tremendous effort. Yet, a small flicker of determination refused to die. She had always been strong, even in quiet ways, and that strength now became her lifeline. The woods around her were both beautiful and threatening. Shadows lengthened as the sun began its slow descent, casting eerie shapes on the ground. Emily shivered, not only from the chill of the evening but from the fear of what night would bring. She had heard stories of travelers lost in these very woods, stories of danger lurking in every corner. Yet, she refused to let fear dominate her completely. She whispered words of encouragement to herself, reminding herself that she was not entirely alone, that somewhere, someone might see her struggle and act. As darkness began to fall, Emily found a small clearing near a large oak tree. She collapsed against it, exhausted but determined to survive. Her vision swam, and she felt herself slipping further into weakness. She pressed her hand to the ground, feeling the rough texture of the soil, the tiny pebbles digging into her palm, and it grounded her, reminding her that she was still alive. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking slow, steady breaths, trying to conserve what little strength she had left. Even as despair threatened to take over, Emily's mind remained sharp enough to notice the subtle sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the faint trickle of the stream. Each sound became a small anchor, a reminder that life continued, that the world around her was indifferent but alive. And in that indifference, there was a chance, however small, for survival. She forced herself to focus on that chance, clinging to the hope that help might come from the most unexpected place. As the night deepened, Emily realized that she had no choice but to face the night alone. She gathered fallen leaves and small branches, trying to make herself as comfortable as possible and to protect herself from the cold creeping in. Her mind wandered to thoughts of what life had been like before Robert's cruelty, to dreams she had quietly held on to. She vowed, in that moment of fear and solitude, that if she survived, she would never allow herself to be powerless again. Her body trembled, but her spirit, though shaken, refused to break. Emily whispered her own name, as if speaking it aloud could somehow summon strength. She reminded herself that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite it. And as the first stars began to appear in the night sky, Emily held on to that courage with every ounce of her being, waiting, hoping, and surviving. Jack had always been a man of few words. He lived on the edge of the small town, in a modest cabin surrounded by wide fields and rolling hills. Life had not been easy for him, but he found peace in the solitude. Every morning, he would wake before sunrise, feed his horses, check the fences, and ride out to ensure that his cattle were safe. He preferred the company of nature to that of people, finding comfort in the simplicity and honesty of the land. That morning was like many others. The sky was painted with soft shades of orange and pink, and a cool breeze carried the fresh scent of dew and earth. Jack saddled his horse, a sturdy brown mare named Daisy, and set off along the familiar trails. He had learned to read the signs of the land, the rustle of leaves that hinted at nearby animals, the faint tracks in the dirt that showed the passage of travelers or wildlife. His eyes were sharp, and his instincts were honed from years of living closely with nature. As he rode, Jack noticed something unusual. A small piece of cloth fluttered in the wind near the edge of the trail. It was faded and torn, but something about it made him slow his horse. He leaned closer, inspecting the fabric. It looked like a scarf, delicate and out of place in the rough wilderness. A chill ran down his spine. He had learned long ago that unusual signs in the wild often meant someone was in trouble. Jack's gaze scanned the surrounding trees, his sharp eyes catching movement among the shadows. At first, he thought it might be a deer or a fox. But then he heard it, a faint cry, weak and trembling. He could barely make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone was in danger. Without hesitation, he urged Daisy forward, following the sound through the thick brush. His heart, though steady, beat faster, with a mixture of concern and determination. As he pushed through the foliage, Jack caught sight of a figure lying on the ground. It was a woman, pale and trembling, her body weak, and her leg bent at an awkward angle. He recognized the signs immediately. Her skin was marked with redness and swelling, and she was sweating despite the cool morning air. Jack's face tightened with concern. She had been bitten by a venomous snake, and it was clear that time was critical. "Hey, can you hear me?" Jack called, his voice calm but firm. The woman's eyes fluttered open, fear and pain evident in their depths. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. Jack dismounted, kneeling beside her, examining the bite. He had dealt with injuries before, but venom was different. It required careful handling, quick thinking, and precise action. Jack's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The nearest town was miles away, and the woman's condition was deteriorating. He could not leave her here. His hands moved with practiced skill as he prepared to stabilize her. He found a clean piece of cloth, fashioned a loose band around her leg above the bite to slow the spread of venom, and gently guided her to sit upright. Her strength was fading rapidly, and he realized that carrying her would be the only way to get her to safety. With careful effort, he lifted her onto Daisy's back, making sure she was secure without causing further pain. She clung weakly to him, her head resting against his chest, and he whispered words of reassurance. "Hold on, you're going to be okay. I won't let anything happen to you." His voice was steady, a grounding presence in the chaos of her fear and pain. The journey through the woods was perilous. The trail was rough, with hidden roots and uneven ground. Each step of the horse sent jolts through Emily's body, and Jack adjusted his hold, trying to minimize the pain. The forest was alive with sounds, some comforting, some alarming: the chirping of birds, the rustle of unseen creatures, and the distant roar of the wind through the trees. Jack's focus never wavered. He had faced challenges before, but never a rescue as urgent and fragile as this. Hours seemed to pass in what felt like moments. Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring in confusion and fear. Jack spoke to her gently, recounting small details of the landscape, anything to keep her mind engaged and alert. "See that stream ahead? We'll rest there for a moment. The water's clean, and it will help keep you cool." His calm presence and steady guidance provided a fragile thread of hope in the midst of panic. The closer they got to the town, the more Jack realized how little time they had. The venom was strong, and Emily's energy was fading. Every obstacle became a test of endurance: fallen logs across the trail, patches of mud that threatened to slow Daisy down, and steep inclines that required careful navigation. Jack's muscles ached, but he refused to stop. He whispered encouragement to Daisy, urging her forward, knowing that their pace was critical to Emily's survival. At one point, Emily's grip on him loosened, and she slumped against Daisy's side. Panic threatened to rise in Jack's chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He adjusted her position carefully, supporting her as best he could, and reminded her to breathe slowly. "You're stronger than you think. Just a little farther. We're almost there." His words were simple, but they carried weight. A reminder that she was not alone in her fight. As they emerged from the dense forest, the outskirts of the town came into view. The sight of familiar rooftops and open fields brought a flicker of relief to both of them. Jack's pace remained steady, careful not to jostle Emily, but driven by urgency. People in the town began to notice the unusual sight: a man riding hard, carrying a woman who appeared unconscious. Some shouted, some ran to help, and Jack's heart lifted slightly knowing that help was near. Finally, they reached a small cabin near the edge of the town. It belonged to an elderly neighbor who was known for her kindness and quick thinking in emergencies. Jack dismounted, gently lifting Emily from Daisy's back and placing her inside. The neighbor quickly prepared a warm space for her to lie down, while Jack instructed her on the necessary steps to care for the bite until professional help could arrive. Emily's eyes fluttered open, and she looked at Jack with a mixture of confusion, fear, and gratitude. She wanted to speak, but her voice was too weak. Instead, she squeezed his hand slightly, a small gesture that conveyed the depth of her relief. Jack smiled faintly, his own exhaustion evident, but his spirit lifted by the knowledge that she was now safe, at least for the moment. As they waited for the doctor to arrive, Jack stayed by her side, offering water, gentle reassurances, and quiet conversation. He learned her name Emily, and she learned his. In those quiet moments, a connection began to form. Not of romance, but of trust and mutual respect. She had been abandoned by someone who should have protected her. And here was a man, a stranger, risking everything to save her life. Jack's presence was steady, like a rock in a stormy sea. Emily's fear slowly ebbed, replaced by cautious hope. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting warm light through the cabin windows, and with it came the promise of life and recovery. Though the journey had been perilous, both Jack and Emily had shown courage, resilience, and the power of compassion in the face of danger. By the time the doctor arrived, Emily's condition had stabilized enough for proper treatment, and she was slowly beginning to recover. Jack helped explain everything that had happened, his calm demeanor reassuring the doctor that Emily's survival was due to immediate care and brave action. As the doctor worked, Emily looked at Jack with eyes full of gratitude. Though she could not speak all the words, she knew that without him, she would not have made it. The experience had changed both of them. Emily, once weak and abandoned, had survived against the odds. Jack, once a solitary man, had found a renewed sense of purpose. In helping another human being, the bond formed in that urgent struggle would remain. A quiet but profound connection built on bravery, compassion, and trust. And though the shadows of the woods still loomed in Emily's memory, they were no longer as terrifying. She had been found, rescued, and given a chance to live. All because one man, lonely but courageous, had chosen to act when no one else would. The doctor had done everything possible to stabilize Emily. But Jack knew her journey to full safety was far from over. The snake venom had weakened her body more than it initially appeared, and she needed constant care and attention. Jack stayed close, watching over her as she rested on a soft bed in the small cabin. The morning sun poured through the windows, illuminating the dust particles floating in the air and casting a warm glow across the room. Emily's breathing was steady, but fragile, and Jack felt a renewed determination to ensure she made a full recovery. He noticed the faint scars of her struggle etched on her face, the subtle tremors in her hands, and the fear lingering in her eyes. Emily had endured a great deal, and Jack understood that her survival depended not only on medical care, but also on emotional support. He kept his voice calm and soothing, speaking softly as she opened her eyes and looked at him with cautious gratitude. "You're safe now," he said. "No one is going to leave you again." She tried to smile, a small, fragile curve of her lips, but the weight of her ordeal still pressed heavily upon her. Over the next few hours, Jack tended to her every need. He brought water, gently adjusted her position to ease the pain, and spoke quietly, telling her stories about the land he loved and the small adventures he had experienced over the years. His voice had a steady, grounding quality, and though Emily was still weak, she found comfort in his presence. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt that someone truly cared for her well-being. As the day wore on, Emily grew stronger, though she remained too weak to stand on her own. Jack realized that it would be necessary to move her to a safer location, somewhere she could rest fully without fear of danger. The town clinic was too far to carry her comfortably on foot, and the cabin, though safe, lacked proper facilities for a prolonged recovery. Jack considered his options carefully, determined to find the best possible solution. He made the decision to carry her back to his cabin on the edge of the fields, where he could watch over her without interruption. It would be a difficult journey, and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. But Jack had never been one to shy away from a challenge, especially when someone's life depended on him. He carefully lifted Emily, supporting her fragile body against his chest, and prepared to begin the trek. The ride back was slow and tense. Jack placed Emily gently on Daisy's back, ensuring that she was secure and comfortable. Her head rested against his shoulder, and he whispered words of encouragement to help her remain conscious and calm. The path was rough, with rocks, fallen branches, and uneven terrain, and Jack guided the horse with expert skill, balancing urgency with caution. Every step mattered. Every movement could affect Emily's condition, and he treated each moment with precision and care. As they moved through the countryside, Emily began to speak softly, asking questions about Jack's life, his past, and the lands they passed. She was curious, her mind eager to distract itself from the lingering pain. Jack answered patiently, sharing stories of his solitary life, the hardships he had endured, and the beauty he found in the simplicity of nature. His words were honest and humble, and Emily felt a sense of trust growing between them. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe confiding in someone without fear of judgment or betrayal. Night began to fall, and the temperature dropped. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of the nearby fields and the distant river. Jack covered Emily with a light blanket to protect her from the chill and urged Daisy to move steadily but carefully. He knew that exhaustion was Emily's greatest enemy now. Her body was still weak, and she needed to conserve energy. Yet the journey was unavoidable, and he pressed forward, guided by determination and compassion. The darkness brought new challenges. Shadows danced across the path, making it difficult to navigate. Sounds that would have been comforting during the day, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, now seemed sharper and more threatening. Jack's senses were alert, every nerve focused on ensuring Emily's safety. He reminded himself that fear could not overtake him. Her life depended on his strength and presence. With steady hands, he guided Daisy, carefully avoiding roots and rocks that could cause a misstep. At one point, the horse stumbled slightly on a hidden root. Jack tightened his grip, steadying both the animal and Emily. "It's okay," he whispered. "We're fine. Just a little further." His calm reassurance helped Emily remain conscious and focused, preventing panic from overwhelming her. Despite the danger and exhaustion, a quiet determination filled the air. Jack was committed, and Emily felt that unwavering resolve. It gave her strength she did not know she had. During a brief pause, Jack led Daisy to a small stream to give her a drink and rest for a moment. He helped Emily sip water carefully, speaking gently and reminding her to breathe slowly. She looked at him with tired eyes, gratitude shining through the fatigue. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible but full of meaning. Jack shook his head, a small smile on his lips. "No thanks needed. Just hold on. You're going to be okay." As they continued, Jack's mind raced with planning. He had to reach his cabin, but he also had to ensure that Emily remained comfortable throughout the journey. He adjusted her position several times, making sure her legs and back were supported. Each movement was calculated, balancing urgency with caution. He felt a growing bond between them, a silent understanding that transcended words. Emily trusted him, and he felt a protective responsibility that went beyond simple duty. The terrain became more difficult as they approached the hills leading to Jack's property. The path was steep, with loose stones that threatened to make Daisy slip. Jack's hands were firm on the reins, his legs guiding the horse with practiced precision. Emily's body pressed closer to his, and he whispered constant reassurances. "Almost there. Just a little further. We'll rest soon." She nodded weakly, her trust in him absolute. In the midst of pain and fear, she felt safe for the first time in her life. Finally, after what felt like hours, the outline of Jack's cabin appeared through the trees. Relief washed over both of them. Jack urged Daisy carefully down the slope, making sure to keep her steady. Emily's exhaustion was evident, but she held on, knowing that she had reached the safety she had been desperate for. Jack led Daisy to the stable, carefully lifting Emily into the cabin, and placed her on a soft bed he had prepared in advance. The warm glow of the fire filled the room, casting comforting shadows across the walls. Jack tended to her once more, checking her pulse, offering water, and speaking softly. Emily's eyes met his, and a small smile appeared. Fragile but genuine, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and relief. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Jack shook his head, his expression serious but kind. "Just focus on getting better. That's all the thanks I need." Over the next few hours, Jack stayed close, monitoring her condition and ensuring that she remained stable. He gathered herbs and remedies from his cabin, prepared simple food and water, and spoke to her in calm, steady tones. Emily felt a growing trust in him, a sense of safety she had never known before. The horrors of the woods, the snakebite, and her husband's betrayal were still fresh in her mind. But in Jack's presence, those fears began to ease. As night deepened, Emily finally drifted into a restful sleep, exhausted but safe. Jack watched over her, keeping the cabin warm and quiet. He reflected on the journey, the dangers they had faced, and the bond that had formed between them. It was a connection forged in crisis, born of trust, courage, and compassion. He knew that Emily's recovery would take time, but he was committed to staying by her side, ensuring that she had the care, safety, and support she needed. The events of the day had changed both of them. Emily, once abandoned and weakened by fear and venom, had survived against the odds. Jack, a solitary man who had lived a quiet, isolated life, had discovered the power of his own courage and the importance of human connection. Together, they had faced danger, and together, they had survived. By morning, Emily's strength had begun to return. Though fragile, she was breathing easier, her skin no longer pale with venom, and her spirit lifted. She looked at Jack with eyes filled with gratitude and awe. Though words were insufficient, she knew that her life had been saved by someone extraordinary, a man whose bravery and kindness had given her a second chance. Jack smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting quiet determination. He knew that the journey was not yet complete, but he also understood that this was a moment of triumph, a testament to courage, compassion, and the resilience of the human spirit. Together, they had faced the darkness and had emerged into light, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Emily woke to the soft morning light filtering through the cabin windows. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of safety and calm that went beyond relief. Her body was still weak, but her mind was beginning to settle. The fear and panic that had consumed her in the woods seemed distant now, replaced by a cautious hope. Jack was already awake, tending to the horses outside, his movements quiet but purposeful. He had never left her side when she was in danger, and she knew he would not leave now. The cabin had become more than just a place of refuge, it was a sanctuary. Jack had prepared a comfortable bed for her, arranged fresh water and food, and even found herbs that helped soothe her pain and promote healing. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with warmth and a gentle light that made the space feel alive. Emily took a deep breath, realizing how much she had endured and survived. The snakebite, the betrayal, the fear, all of it had tested her in ways she had never imagined. Yet here she was, alive, and slowly regaining her strength. Over the next few days, Emily's recovery continued steadily. Jack remained by her side, assisting her with meals, helping her take light walks around the property, and ensuring that she never overexerted herself. She began to regain her strength, and with each passing day, the shadows of her ordeal grew fainter. She could move with more confidence, eat with more comfort, and sleep without the constant tension that had plagued her nights. But perhaps more importantly, she felt an emotional recovery taking place. For the first time in a long while, she felt trust, kindness, and genuine care. Emily often sat by the window, watching the fields stretch out to the horizon. She reflected on her life, on the mistakes and misjudgments she had made, and on the pain she had endured in her marriage. Robert, who had once seemed charming, had revealed his true nature in the most cruel and unforgiving way. The memory of him leaving her to die in the woods still stung, but it also reminded her of her own resilience. She had survived. Not because of anyone else's protection, but because she had fought to stay alive. And then Jack had appeared, a man who had risked everything for a stranger, a man whose courage and compassion had given her a second chance. Jack, meanwhile, went about his daily routines but always remained attuned to Emily's needs. He noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor, the way her eyes brightened when she smiled, the way she began to explore small parts of the property with curiosity, and the way her voice, once weak and hesitant, grew stronger and more confident. Jack admired her courage, understanding that surviving such an ordeal required more than physical strength. It required a heart capable of hope and perseverance. One morning, as they worked together to tend the small garden near the cabin, Emily spoke quietly, her voice carrying a mix of reflection and resolve. "I can't believe how much I've been through, and yet I'm still here," she said. Jack nodded, his hands busy with the soil, but his eyes never left her. "You're stronger than most people I know," he replied, "and stronger than you even realize. Surviving what you did, it says a lot about your spirit." Emily looked at him, a faint smile forming on her lips. For the first time, she felt safe enough to speak openly about her experiences, to acknowledge the pain without being consumed by it. The days turned into weeks, and Emily's recovery progressed steadily. She was no longer confined to the cabin. She could walk longer distances, prepare simple meals, and even help with chores around the property. Each task, though small, became a symbol of her independence and growing confidence. She realized that surviving the snakebite and Robert's betrayal had changed her. But it had also strengthened her. She was no longer the woman who felt powerless or afraid. She was someone who had faced danger, survived, and reclaimed her life. As Emily's strength returned, thoughts of her husband began to surface more clearly. Robert had abandoned her in the most cruel way, and she felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and relief. She was angry for the betrayal, sad for the life she had hoped for that could never exist with him, and relieved that she had survived to witness his true nature. Emily knew that she did not need closure from him to move forward. His actions had already spoken volumes, and her future no longer depended on him. She had a second chance, and she intended to embrace it fully. One afternoon, a visitor from the town arrived, bringing news about Robert. Word had spread about his cruel actions, and the town had begun to turn against him. He faced social condemnation, and some legal authorities were investigating the circumstances of Emily's abandonment. Though Emily felt no joy in revenge, she felt a quiet sense of justice. The man who had tried to harm her life would no longer have power over her or her reputation. She was free, not only physically but emotionally, to live her life on her own terms. During this time, Emily and Jack grew closer. Though their bond was not rushed or forced, it was built on mutual respect, gratitude, and shared experience. Jack had shown her kindness when no one else would, and Emily had demonstrated strength and resilience in the face of unimaginable danger. Their connection deepened naturally, filled with quiet conversations, shared tasks, and moments of laughter that slowly replaced the fear and tension of past days. It was a partnership founded not on necessity, but on genuine care and understanding. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, Emily and Jack sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink, orange, and purple. Emily leaned back against Jack, feeling the warmth of the firelight and the comfort of his presence. "I never thought I would find peace again," she said softly. Jack looked at her, his eyes steady and kind. "Sometimes, life gives us a second chance when we least expect it. You're stronger now, and I'll be here as long as you need me." Emily smiled, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and hope. The cabin, once a place of simple shelter, had become a home filled with warmth, healing, and trust. Emily had learned to appreciate the small joys, caring for the garden, listening to the wind in the trees, sharing quiet meals with Jack and watching the stars at night. She discovered that life, even after betrayal and danger, could be beautiful and meaningful. Each day was a gift, and she embraced it fully, with courage and a renewed sense of purpose. Emily also began to reconnect with the small town she had once called home. She visited neighbors, helped with local chores, and slowly rebuilt the relationships that had faded during her difficult marriage. The town, having witnessed her ordeal and Jack's bravery, treated her with respect and admiration. Emily realized that she was not alone. Even after the darkest moments, human kindness and connection could be found in unexpected places. As the months passed, Emily fully recovered from her ordeal, both physically and emotionally. She had faced fear, betrayal, and danger, yet she emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. She had discovered an inner strength she had never known, a courage that allowed her to face challenges without fear. And she had discovered Jack, a man whose bravery, compassion, and steadfast presence had changed the course of her life. Their bond became a symbol of hope and resilience. It was not built on dramatic gestures or sudden passion, but on everyday acts of care, trust, and support. Emily and Jack worked together, laughed together, and supported each other, creating a life filled with harmony and understanding. Emily's past, though painful, no longer defined her. She had reclaimed her life, her confidence, and her sense of self. One sunny morning, as Emily tended to the flowers in her garden, she paused to look at Jack, who was repairing a fence nearby. The sight of him, steady and dependable, filled her with a quiet joy. She realized that she had been given a second chance, not just at survival, but at happiness, trust, and meaningful connection. Life had tested her, but it had also given her the opportunity to grow, heal, and thrive. Emily's story became an inspiration to the people around her. Her survival against the odds, her resilience in the face of betrayal, and her ability to embrace life again showed that courage and hope could prevail even in the darkest circumstances. She had faced death and cruelty, and had emerged with her spirit intact, and through it all, she had discovered the power of compassion, the importance of trust, and the value of human connection. In the quiet moments of the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle, Emily and Jack would sit together, reflecting on the journey they had shared. They had faced danger, fear, and uncertainty, yet they had emerged stronger and more connected than ever. Their lives, once marked by isolation and pain, had transformed into a story of courage, compassion, and hope. Emily had survived the snakebite, survived betrayal, and survived fear. But more than that, she had learned that life could be rebuilt, trust could be restored, and happiness could be found even after unimaginable hardship. And beside her, Jack remained a steadfast presence, a reminder that kindness and courage could change lives, that even in the loneliest moments, hope could be found, and that every second chance in life was worth embracing fully. As the stars shone brightly over the rolling hills, Emily whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "I am alive. I am free, and I will live my life with courage and hope." Jack, sitting quietly beside her, simply nodded, understanding that their journey together was only beginning. A journey filled with trust, healing, and the promise of brighter days ahead.